The machine started beeping. Dr. Martinez stared at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. "Curtis," he said, "I need to run this again." That was the third time. The EKG machine, the blood pressure monitor, even the basic heart rate sensor, all of them giving readings that made him scratch his head and call for the nurse. I was 88 years old, sitting on that cold examination table, watching my cardiologist lose his confidence in modern medicine. All because of 5 cups of coffee. Every single day. For 40 years. You want to know the truth about what doctors don't tell you? They expect you to be dying by 80. Especially if you're black. Especially if you grew up poor. Especially if you've been drinking coffee like water since you were 48 years old. But there I was, heart pumping like a 40-year-old marathon runner, blood pressure that made nurses double-check their equipment, and arteries so clear you could see through them like glass windows. It started in 1972, December 3rd to be exact. I remember because that was the day I buried my first wife, Sarah. Cancer took her at 52. After the funeral, I came home to this same kitchen, sat at this same table, and made myself a cup of coffee. Black, strong, the kind that wakes up your soul when everything else wants to sleep forever. The silence in that house was so thick you could cut it with a knife. No more Sarah humming while she cooked. No more sound of her slippers on the linoleum. No more, "Curtis, honey, dinner's ready." Just me, this empty kitchen, and a cup of coffee that tasted like bitter truth. That's when I made a promise to myself. I was going to live. Really live. Not just exist, but live with intention. And somehow, that promise started with coffee. 5 cups became my ritual. First one at 5:30 in the morning, while the world was still dark. Second one at 8, right before I left for the steel mill. Third one at lunch, sitting with the boys, talking about everything except what really mattered. Fourth one at 3, when the afternoon crash wanted to pull me under. Fifth one at 6, when I got home, sitting right here at this table, planning tomorrow. People thought I was crazy. "Curtis," they'd say, "that much coffee's gonna kill you. Curtis, you need to slow down. Curtis, you're asking for a heart attack." Even my own children started lecturing me. My son Michael would visit and count my coffee cups like he was gathering evidence for an intervention. My daughter Linda would hide my coffee beans and replace them with decaf, thinking I wouldn't notice. I noticed, but I kept drinking. See, what they didn't understand was that coffee wasn't just coffee for me. It was time. It was routine. It was the one thing that belonged to me and nobody else. In a world that wanted to tell a black man how to live, how to work, how to age, how to die, coffee was my rebellion. Each cup was me saying, "I'm still here. I'm still choosing. I'm still alive." But it wasn't just the coffee. That would be too simple. It was what I did between those cups. After Sarah died, I started cooking differently. Started eating differently. You know what I had for breakfast this morning? Same thing I've had every morning for the past 30 years. Scrambled eggs cooked in real butter. 2 strips of bacon. A piece of steak, medium rare. And coffee. Black coffee that could wake the dead. Most people walk away when stories get this heavy. The fact that you're still listening, that means something. Hit subscribe. I've got more to tell. The doctors tried to scare me off red meat starting in the 80s. "Curtis, you need to cut back on the beef. Curtis, think about your cholesterol." Curtis, at your age, you should be eating more vegetables. But here's what I learned. My body knew what it needed better than any doctor with a degree from a fancy medical school. My grandfather lived to 97, eating nothing but farm food, real food, meat from animals that ate grass, not chemicals, vegetables from dirt, not laboratories, coffee beans that came from actual coffee plants, not processing facilities. I kept my routine. 5 cups of coffee, red meat every single day. And you know what happened? I got stronger, not weaker, stronger. While my friends were taking pills for their hearts, I was climbing stairs without getting winded. While they were complaining about their blood pressure, mine stayed steady as a rock. While they were worried about their cholesterol, my numbers kept getting better. The turning point came when I was 75. That's when Dr. Peterson, my doctor before Martinez, sent me for my first real cardiac evaluation. I remember sitting in that waiting room, surrounded by people half my age who looked twice as sick. When they called my name, I stood up without using my hands, walked to the examination room without shuffling, climbed onto the table without assistance. The technician running the EKG looked at me like I was some kind of medical mystery. "Sir," she said, "have you been an athlete your whole life?" I laughed. "Lady, I worked in a steel mill for 35 years and raised 4 children. That's athlete enough for me." She ran the test 3 times, same result every time. Heart function of a 45-year-old. Circulation that made her call for the supervising physician. When Dr. Peterson saw the results, he sat down heavy in his chair and asked me the question that changed everything. "Curtis, what exactly are you doing?" That's when I told him about the coffee, about the meat, about the routine, about living intentionally instead of just surviving. He nodded like he understood something he'd never been taught in medical school. "Keep doing exactly what you're doing," he said. That was 20 years ago. But the real shock came at 88. Dr. Martinez had just taken over the practice. Young guy, fresh out of residency, full of modern ideas about how old people should live. He looked at my chart before he looked at me, saw my age, saw my dietary habits, saw the notes about 5 cups of coffee daily, and I could watch him preparing his lecture about lifestyle changes. Then he took my vitals. Blood pressure, 118/75. Perfect. Heart rate, 68 beats per minute. Resting, strong, regular. Blood oxygen, 98%. Better than most 30-year-olds. He frowned, asked the nurse to check again. Same results. That's when he ordered the EKG, the machine that started beeping because it couldn't believe what it was reading. "Curtis," he said after running every test twice, "I need to ask you something. Have you been taking any medications that aren't on your chart?" I told him the truth. No medications, no supplements, no special treatments. Just coffee, real food, and a refusal to live like a dying man. That day, I learned something that changed everything I believed about getting older. Someone once told me there are rules that change after 60. One of them says that patience after 60 is the fastest way to die forgotten. My doctor said, wait for the next appointment. Wait for more tests. Wait for a specialist. I stopped waiting. That guide is in the description below. He wanted me to come back in a month for more tests. I never did. Why would I? The machine wasn't broken, the readings were right. My heart was strong because I'd been feeding it what it needed for 40 years. Not what the medical establishment thought it needed, what it actually needed. Coffee for circulation, Red meat for protein and iron. Routine for purpose. Intention for life. See, here's what most doctors don't understand about aging. They treat it like a disease that needs to be managed, instead of a stage of life that needs to be lived. They want you to take pills to fix problems that might exist, instead of doing things that prevent problems from starting. They want you to be afraid of everything that gives you pleasure, because it might, possibly, theoretically, cause problems later. But later came. I'm 95 now, 7 years past that appointment that broke the machine. And I'm still here, drinking my 5 cups of coffee every day, eating red meat at every meal, refusing to live like I'm already dead. This morning I had a ribeye steak for breakfast. Tomorrow I'll have another one. Next week, another one. Because my body knows what it needs, and I've learned to listen. The secret isn't the coffee, though the coffee helps. The secret isn't the meat, though the meat matters. The secret is refusing to surrender to other people's expectations about how you should age. When everyone around you starts talking about slowing down, you speed up. When they start talking about being careful, you get bolder. When they start planning your decline, you plan your renaissance. Last month, my great-grandson visited. 14 years old, full of energy, always on his phone. He looked at my breakfast, eggs, bacon, steak, and coffee, and said, "Grandpa Curtis, isn't that kind of food bad for old people?" I looked at him and said, "Son, I'm not old people. I'm just people who've been alive for a long time. And this food has kept me alive longer than most." That afternoon we went for a walk. A real walk, not the shuffling kind that old people are supposed to do. We walked 3 miles through the neighborhood, talking about life, about choices, about what it means to live on your own terms. When we got back, he was the one who needed to sit down. I was ready to keep going. That night, as I sat at this kitchen table drinking my 5th cup of coffee of the day, I realized something. The machine wasn't broken that day in Dr. Martinez's office. The machine was working perfectly. It was just confused because it had been programmed to expect broken bodies, weak hearts, and dying spirits from people my age. When it encountered a body that had been fed properly, treated properly, and lived properly for decades, it didn't know what to do. But I knew what to do. I knew what I'd been doing for 40 years. I finished my coffee, planned my next day, and went to sleep knowing I'd wake up tomorrow, ready to do it all again. Because that's what living intentionally means. It means every cup of coffee is a choice. Every meal is a decision. Every day is a chance to prove that age is just information, not instructions. Everything I learned about patience, about surrender, about expectations, it's all in something called the 60-year rule. 9 rules that explain exactly why everything I believed was wrong after 60. It changed how I see my health, my choices, my entire life. Check the description. These days, I still sit at this same kitchen table every morning at 5:30. Same routine, same coffee, same intention to live fully instead of just surviving. The only difference is that now I know why it works. It works because I chose to feed my body what it needed instead of what I was told it should have. I chose to trust my instincts instead of other people's fears. I chose to live like I meant it. Tomorrow morning, I'll make my first cup of coffee at 5:30. Strong and black, just like always. I'll cook myself eggs and bacon and a piece of steak. I'll sit at this table and plan another day of being fully alive at 95. And if some doctor wants to hook me up to a machine that can't understand what it's reading, well, that's his problem, not mine. The machine wasn't broken. I was just living right.